Manggarai Station looks ordinary in the daytime, crowded with passengers. But at night, the atmosphere turns eerie. Many believe a mysterious train appears at midnight, never on the schedule, never announced. Tonight, we hear the true stories of witnesses who saw the Ghost Train of Manggarai, a train that never reaches its final destination. First testimony, the station officer. The station officer at Manggarai had grown used to the silence of the late night. But there was one night he would never forget. Around 2 a.m, as he stood guard at the platform, he heard a faint rumble in the distance, like the sound of a train approaching. But strangely, the loudspeakers made no announcements. The schedule was empty, and he knew no train was supposed to pass at that hour. Through the thick fog, he spotted a dim light drawing nearer. Slowly, it revealed itself, the headlights of an old train, its paint peeling, its steel frame rusted. But what struck him most was the silence. The train moved without the roar of engines, gliding eerily along the tracks. It stopped right in front of him. The doors slid open with a cold hiss. Behind the windows, dozens of pale faces stared straight at him, their expressions frozen, lifeless, empty. He wanted to run, but his legs would not move. Moments later, the doors closed. The train pulled away without a sound, fading into the fog. When silence returned, his body shook uncontrollably. From that night on, he swore something haunted the Manggarai platform. Second testimony, the passenger who escaped. One late-night passenger was waiting for the last train bound for Bogor City. He had already bought his ticket and sat alone near the gate. But what he witnessed that night convinced him never to wait for a train after dark again. From the tracks, a train crept slowly into view. Its lights were faint, almost dead, but just enough to reveal the passengers inside. Dozens of figures sat silently in their seats, but their faces were blank. No eyes, no mouths, just pale, gray, featureless skin. He leapt to his feet, stepping backward, his heart pounding violently. The train kept moving, yet every head inside turned toward him in unison. Even without eyes, he felt the weight of dozens of cold, empty stares. When the train finally dissolved into the fog, his legs gave out. The ticket slipped from his hand as he ran from the station. From that night onward, he never dared to ride a late-night train again. Better to walk, he always said, than to board the wrong train. Third testimony, the railway guard. The night guard at the railway crossing followed his usual routine, checking the gates, ensuring the signals worked, and waiting for trains to pass. But one night, he saw something that froze his blood. Around 1 a.m, a deafening rumble filled the air. He raised his lantern, ready to signal. From the north, a blazing white light rushed toward him. A train thundered forward at impossible speed, but strangely, its body glowed like fire burning from within. As it roared past, he glimpsed the inside of the carriages, faint silhouettes, ghostly figures screaming without sound, pressed against the windows. The noise grew unbearable, vibrating through his bones. Then in a flash, the train vanished, leaving only sparks in the night air. He collapsed to the ground, his lantern shattering beside him. When he regained his senses, silence had returned. Yet the scorched marks on the gravel remained the next morning, proof of the nightmare he had witnessed. Fourth testimony, the child witness. A small child was waiting at Manggarai Station for his father to return from work. He clutched his teddy bear tightly, standing near the dim corner of a wall. From afar, a train rolled in. He smiled faintly, hoping his father was inside. But when it stopped, what he saw instead chilled him to the bone. Behind the windows, pale figures waved at him. Their smiles stretched unnaturally wide, their eyes vacant. More and more of them began waving, beckoning him closer. Terrified, the boy ran to the station guard. When he turned back, the train had vanished without a trace. Only fog remained, and the faint echo of laughter drifting through the night. Flashback, the dark history of Manggarai. Manggarai Station was built during the Dutch colonial era in 1918, which means it has stood for more than a century. For over 100 years, the tracks around Manggarai have witnessed many tragedies. Commuter train collisions, passengers dragged to their deaths, even railway workers losing their lives while on duty. Locals believe these tragedies left behind traces of restless energy at Manggarai. Spirits that never found peace remain trapped inside the phantom train. And every midnight, they pass through Manggarai Station once more, searching for something they could never find in life. A way home. Fifth testimony, the night vendor. A street vendor had worked near Manggarai Station for years. He knew the late-night hours were usually quiet, with only a few lingering customers. But one night, he felt something that made his entire body tremble. As he packed his stall, the sound of a train's rumble filled the air. He turned and saw a long shadow gliding behind him, a train. But strangely, there was no sound of wheels, no engine, just a silent glide along the tracks. Through the windows, pale passengers sat stiffly. Some turned their heads toward him, their eyes unblinking, cold. Terrified, he averted his gaze, squeezing his eyes shut, hoping it was only his imagination. When he dared to look again, the last carriage was fading into the night. Silence returned. No real train had passed. From that night on, he never worked so late again. He knew. Not all travelers in Manggarai were human. Sixth testimony, the night ojek driver. A motorcycle taxi driver used to waiting for passengers late at night was familiar with Manggarai's silence. But that night, something was different. While smoking on his bike, he heard the crossing gate creak open. Yet he knew no train was scheduled. Suddenly, through the fog, a long shadow appeared. A train glided past without sound, leaving only a chilling vibration in the air. What terrified him most were the passengers waving from inside. Their hands were pitch black, charred as if burned. Panicking, he started his engine and sped away from the station. From that night on, he never waited past 11 o'clock again. Seventh testimony, the station cleaner. A station cleaner often worked the midnight shift, accompanied only by crickets and flickering neon lights. But that night, something made him stop. As he mopped the floor, the sound of wet footsteps echoed behind him. He turned. No one was there. Yet on the tiles, fresh, wet footprints led straight toward the platform. He followed cautiously, trembling. The prints ended at the edge of the tracks, then vanished. From the fog came the sound of a passing train, though the rails were empty. From that night on, he believed, the Manggarai ghost train does not only appear, it leaves traces behind. Eighth testimony, the local resident. Residents living near Manggarai often speak of the ghost train. An old woman whose house faced the tracks once said that on certain nights she would hear a distant rumble. Peeking through her wooden window, she saw a faint glow moving past the houses. A long train glided silently, leaving only strange sparks in the night air. What horrified her most was the sight of figures standing in the windows, staring directly at her, even though her house was far from the tracks. She quickly shut her window. From that night on, she lit an oil lamp at midnight, believing it could ward off the passengers' restless spirits. 9 testimony. The ghost train stops at Manggarai. That night, several witnesses saw something rare. The ghost train did not simply pass. It stopped. Slowly, its faintly screeching wheels came to a halt at Manggarai's platform. The carriage doors opened one by one. From within spilled a chilling air that cut to the bone. Pale figures stood by the doors, some staring blankly outward, others shifting as if trying to step outside. There was no sound, only the thickening fog and strange shadows moving across the platform. The witnesses felt as if they were being called, as though unseen hands beckoned them to board. Seconds stretched like eternity. Then, as if obeying an unheard command, the doors slid shut once more. The train began to move, fading into the mist. What remained was silence and a haunting question. Who was the train waiting for? To this very day, the story of the Manggarai ghost train remains a chilling mystery that continues to haunt many. Some dismiss it as nothing but an illusion. Others believe it is the restless spirits of the dead, still searching for their way home. Every night, new whispers spread of faint rumbles echoing through the tracks, or sudden flashes of light from a train that should not exist. The train never truly stops. It always returns, always searching. And if one night you find yourself standing alone at Manggarai Station, and you hear the sound of a train with no announcement, no schedule, be careful. You may be witnessing a train that was never recorded. A train that will never reach its destination. A train awaited only by those who no longer walk among the living.